All right. Well, you know what? We're supposed to be starting, but you know what? My partner just lost his tongue again.
I got it. I got it. Yeah. Listen. Okay, John. We've been laughing all the way through the day here. So
That's good. That's exactly
All
what you
day,
want, you
all
know?
day.
it's great to have you. I think your history is fascinating to me. I mean, and I'm sure it's going to resonate with some people out there that that have been through struggle and strain, and our listeners and viewers are going to be inspired by what you're doing and what you've made of yourself. But you know, your history has not always been peaceful as and a nice roof over your head. From what I understand, you were actually homeless at one time in your life. In a lot of areas of us, we see homeless people all around. Can you talk about this experience and how what was it that put you in that place and then brought you out?
Yeah, I'm very open about my past and everything. It's like, because trying to connect with people, they need something to connect with. And in today's kind of look at me kind of thing, like, this is what I can do, which is awesome. But really, when it comes down to it, what's your pain? Like, what have you been through? Because it helps the people to connect to me better, and I can connect to them, and they get more out of, all the things I teach and do, because there has to be some kind of connection, like, so my past is one of my greatest gifts, because I tell people, yeah, I was homeless, I was eating dog food, I was on the streets for many years. This wasn't just like a quick thing. I was many, many years in a row. And, rock bottom, as they say. And I found out quickly, living on the streets, that rock bottom doesn't have a bottom. It's a continually dropping bottom to bottom to bottom. And how do you get yourself out of that was one of my greatest achievements. And that's what I inspire people to do. Is everybody has their own version of rock bottom, but it's still rock bottom though. It's just, what level are you on? Getting yourself out is kind of a thing that I've had to study for almost 15 years now, to help connect the dots of what that actually means, and where you actually have to go and what you have to do to get out of it. And that voice, for me, has always and will be anatomy. Everybody has a physical body. What about the physical body that we all share? Wherein lies the answers for these basic fundamental questions that are very complicated to explain? Where is the simplicity? Where is the focal point that is simple to understand and simple to apply, so that you can make actually positive change in your life and take yourself out of that rock bottom? And that's what I do.
John, I think that being at rock bottom, I tell my kids, you should at least go broke when you're young and have heartbreak.
Yeah.
At least at some point when you're young and versatile enough to bounce back. But to achieve rock bottom, what happened that got you to that point? What tipped the scales?
Oh, for me, it was very easy. I was destined to hit rock bottom, because when I grew up, I didn't have really any set parents. My parents that I did have, they didn't want anything to do with me, so I went from home to home to home, and there's nobody to stop me. And that's what did it for me. I didn't have anybody in my life that said, Jonathan, you need to stop doing this. You need to start doing that. A parental figure, right? Somebody to help save us from ourselves. And that's what parents are kind of there for, to say, hey, guess what? You're doing things wrong, because I know, based upon my experience, I'm older than you. I have more wisdom than you. Stop doing that and start doing this. And that's what parents generally do. I didn't have any of that. I was just free to just hit rock bottom, and nobody was going to stop me. I didn't have anybody to stop me. And that's what did it for me.
It reminds me of one of my favorite TV shows. I understand that you went from homeless to living with monks. Is that
correct? Yeah.
I naturally think of David Carradine in Kung Fu.
Yeah.
As Kwai Chang Caine.
Yep.
He inspired me. What was that like?
Because I grew up in northern New Mexico, a little town called Taos, and the monks, they have monasteries there in the mountains, and every year they come and they do a massive circle around the whole town, and they go back to the mountains. It's like in July. It's like a yearly on foot travel for them to go back up the mountains. And I saw that as a kid for 10 years. And I'm like, what are these guys doing over here? Like, what's going on? They had shaved heads, the red robes, and there was a bunch of them. There's about 20 of them. And I'm like, they're doing something, because it wasn't so much the way they looked. It was the vibe that I felt. It was like a blankness. They were just like so quiet and calm that they're almost like a ghost. You couldn't see them. If there was no vibe coming from them at all, which is very interesting to me as a little kid. I'm like, my friends, all the people I see, the adults, they're all, you can tell that they have a vibe to them. But the monks, they had a lack of one, just at peace, it's utter stillness. And I was like, huh. So I went to the local library as a young kid, and I started reading on this stuff, Buddhism, monks. I found whatever I could and read about it. And that was the seed that got planted as a young kid for me, because later on in life, when I found myself out of high school, no direction, no parents, no nothing. I barely graduated high school. They put me in special development classes because I couldn't learn. I could barely write, could barely read. And I went from school to the streets because I didn't have anything I could go off of at all. So I wound up on the streets, and I was like, huh, well, if this is where it ends for me, because that's exactly what it felt like, it was directionless. I remembered in my mind, oh yeah, the monks walk around. So I'm such at unease with myself, so distraught, so angry. As a teenager, you could imagine hormones are raging and drugs in the mix, alcohol, you name it. And I was like, I can see where this path ends, because where I grew up in New Mexico, it's one of the most violent states in the U.S., especially Albuquerque. Cops, that famous TV show, Cops, most of these episodes were filmed in New Mexico, believe it or not, because it's so violent that they had a playground to work with as far as, getting footage on camera, people doing crime. So at high school, I was not anything unique. Crime was rampant, drug abuse everywhere, people dying all the time because of drugs, alcohol, and gang violence. And that's what I was, just a basic human being at that point. Anywhere else I would have stood out, but in New Mexico, I was a dime a dozen. Just like there's a lot of people just like me on the streets, just like me. I said, hold on, I see where this ends, because I grew up there, and I have an entire lifetime experience of seeing what happens when people get on drugs. They start to wither away. Then you basically don't see them anymore. Oh, did you hear about Jose? He died. It's like, oh, shocker. So I saw the path that was leading in front of me, and I had a moment of clarity of like, I want to do what the monks are doing. Whatever peace that is, that stillness they have, I want it. I really need to attain that, not out of greed or arrogance or vanity, but out of conscience. Like, I need to attain this, or I know what's going to happen to me if I don't. So during the summer when I graduated, they came down to the town, and this time I had a different mindset. I'm going to follow these people, and I'm going to beg them to take me with them so that they can train me, or I can learn something from them of what to do. As far as attaining internal peace, just being happy. Because at that point, when you're on drugs and you're homeless, you're not really that happy. It's a chemical happiness, and that wears off. And that's where, the escapism from drug use comes from. You don't like the way you are now. You don't like the way you feel. So people use substances to escape that feeling, to introduce a chemical feeling. And I know that the feeling I was feeling, that was only temporary. It would wear off the next day. So I had to follow these people, and that was my mission. And that's kind of where it all started for me, right there on that day. It was like in the summer after I graduated. So,
so you embedded yourself in with these monks. What was that like? And I mean, I can't imagine what were some of the things you experienced during that course of time.
Oh, it was basically the first reaction I got was, or the first response I got was, no, get out of here. Because where I grew up at, homeless people are everywhere. There were, New Mexico is one of the spiritual capitals of the world. New Mexico, northern New Mexico is one of the witchcraft capitals of the world. So I grew up in spiritual hippieville right there. And there were many, many, many people doing the same thing as me. asking them, hey, can I train with you? You're a monk. Can I be a monk? And they were like, no, no. They had said no, no, no to everybody because the amount of discipline and dedication it takes to follow the breath and meditation that they live. They don't just practice an hour a day. This is like all the time. That's what monks do. They had built up a lot of people that wanted the same thing, and I think through repetition of allowing people in, and when you get the reality that this is what you're going to do all day long for probably years, the reality sets in, and a lot of people leave. A lot of people got kicked out from what I've heard in the past before I went there. So they had said, "No, we've done this before. No, you're not coming in." So me, I was like, I don't have anything else to go to. I have nobody to go to. So I'm gonna wait it out. I'm gonna keep asking. I know where you guys are because I followed you. And I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna keep asking and asking until you say yes. And I told them I'm not gonna give up. And they're like, yeah, okay, you're right. Yeah, I won't see you again. Maybe you might last a month, but you're gonna go away. So it took about a good almost a year of me living on the streets, eating bird seeds out of the local, school, yard. I was eating bird seeds. I was, you name it. I was robbing people's houses for food. I was doing whatever I could do. And I kept going back. I said, take me, take me, take me. And eventually they saw that I wasn't going to give up because very rarely do they see people say they're going to do something and they continuously do it every day for a year. They're like, okay, you're in. Okay, you've proven your point. There's nobody else. The crowd has thinned to just you. Okay, we'll let you in. And that was so that alone was it was a huge deal because it got me to a place where I could exist. And it's very emotional. It still is because if it wasn't for that, I know I wouldn't be here. And that level of gratitude doesn't ever go away. And it bleeds into everything else I do. So that is how, it starts not just for me, but for all of us. We all need that break in life. We all need to get to that point where, okay, something can help me. Somebody's going to help me. And a lot of people never really get that. And it's really hard to see. So I figured if I could get that break, I could inspire people to understand that they can get it too. If you're persistent enough, you can achieve that. That's where my story starts, and that's why I share with everybody. And as you can see, I'm still emotional about it, still to this day, because that level of willingness to keep going when you shouldn't, when there's no reason to keep going, when there's every reason to quit, and yet you still keep going. That is the mindset that I try so hard to embody with everything I teach, everybody I meet at the store, online, everywhere I go. That is that message. It's not about me. It's about that mindset, that perception. And if you can contain that yourself, you're going to achieve anything you want to. And that's what I've tried really, really hard to achieve with my world records, with everything I've done. I really, really put that as at the forefront of everything. It's not me, it's you. And that's where the meditation and the breath begins, because it begins with your biology, your physiology. That's where the focal point is, not me.
Jon, I want to get into the breathing or
Yeah,
the breath
absolutely.
work you talk about, but I just have to ask you, please tell me, what was that moment like when you knew you were going to ask again and they were going to probably turn you down?
Yep.
Did they go, you know what, hold on, son, we'll be right back? And did they huddle up and then come back? What was that moment like? What did they do? How did they accept you finally?
Well, my teachers were lifelong meditationists. There is nothing you can't hide from them because they can just read you like a book. You don't got to say anything at all. You don't got to do anything at all. You don't got to look a certain way. They can tell just by being in your vibrational field, as they say. Oh, Jonathan's got a bad vibe. This person's got a good vibe. They can read that like all of us can. If I meet somebody for the first time, oh boy, yeah, they're nice, but they just didn't feel right to me. Something isn't right there. There's a bad vibe, right? So with the monks, you can't hide that. When they realized that I had that vibe, that I was going to do anything and I was willing to go all the way, it was at that moment they're like, okay, you're in. They didn't have to huddle, they didn't have to do anything at all. They just instantaneously, they just let me in. I was like, yeah, oh yeah. I was like you guys didn't have a ceremony or you didn't have a get together, and there was no voting going on. No, it was nothing like that. Okay, you're in. Like, it was just like that.
So was it kind of like great, and then let down at the same time? You're expecting like this great thing.
I was expecting balloons, and because I waited so long, you have to understand, a year on the streets, being homeless, just to get that one okay. I was like, in my mind, there was monster trucks and explosions, and it was like, but to them, it was like, okay, it was an everyday, or they didn't change anything at all. So I was like, whoa.
So you didn't, the Monty Python Holy Grail, you didn't get that light coming down from the
definitely felt that
thing
way,
with the big grail on top, and you got none of that, huh?
Open up.
Dang it!
The grand,
yeah.
The grand poobah comes down.
Exactly.
Granted, you are in.
It absolutely felt that way, 100%.
Like,
and for me, that light was, you have a chance to have a life here, and I was like, whoa, it was like being baptized, whatever you might call it. It was like a religious experience to me, and that was like, whoa. But that was when the reality hit. That feeling did not last too long, because the first preliminary days of training with the Buddhists, absolutely grueling. And I am talking about grueling. It is the most difficult tasks they have given me, that I could ever imagine a human being being able to withstand. Like, how much more can a human being take? That was the reality that hit quickly after that. It went from one spectrum to the other so fast, it made my head spin.
I understand you had a near-death experience.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Now, this happened while I was homeless too, and this is what I think was the trigger. Had that not happened, my perception would have not changed, and my vibe wouldn't have changed, and they would have seen somebody who wasn't really serious. Because when I was on the streets during that year of me waiting around, asking, I had gotten considerably thin, like 120. I was 125 pounds. At 6'5", I wasn't eating very much. I was still using drugs, because at that point I'm like, oh, there's nothing to live for, and I would use the drugs and then alcohol and all this stuff, and the homeless people around me would encourage me, and I was in the wrong crowd, and then still I would come back still when I shouldn't have, because I had nothing else to go to. So when you have nothing else to go on, you have that one thing, you will die going towards that one thing. When you have nothing else. So I still did that. And what ended up happening to me is that I got so thin, so just gone. Hair was falling out. My fingernails were literally cracking. I had so many vitamin deficiencies. My liver was literally, being killed from all the alcohol. I was withering away. And I ended up having to be rushed to the emergency room, because somebody found me on the side of the road. They had to call the cops. An ambulance came out. And it had to resuscitate me. So it was really, I had that perfect NED, NDE, near-death experience. I had very classical, here's the light beings telling you that you're going to heaven, but you still have more work to do. Go back. So I had that classical experience of being told to come back, because your work here is not done. And that scared me to death. It scared me straight. When I left the hospital, they had put IVs in me. They had brought me back. I had stayed there for a while. And since I was homeless, I was registered as a John Doe, because I didn't have any license and any identification. So they put me back out on the street after I was okay. And I was like, why would you let me go? And they said, we do this all the time. Homeless people come in here all the time, drugged out of their mind, dying all the time. This is in Mexico. This is a normal everyday thing. So they got me better. and put me back out. Hey, here's some programs, get out of here. So after that experience, I went from being, this is what I think I have to do to this is what I know I have to do in my conscience, in my heart area. This is what I have to do. And my mindset completely changed. And after that, it wasn't too long after they said, okay, you're in, because you understand this is your purpose on this earth, is to expand and evolve to higher levels of awareness. And you're willing to do whatever it takes. And they could tell that. And I didn't say anything about about dying, but the hospital, I didn't say a word. And they already knew. They just knew. It was very fascinating to me. I'm like, wow, you guys can talk without speaking, can you? And basically, yes.
This is setting the stage for what you've become a master at. But you started to comment on what it took to, what they put you through to become a monk.
Yes.
And what were you there for 4 years? Or
yeah, it was around 4 years. The first 2 years was preliminary training as well. They didn't tell me this, but it was just getting used to being in isolation 24 hours a day. It was getting used to breathing. They'd wake you up early in the morning. We were holding up rocks, climbing mountains, doing incredibly difficult tasks. And then we would meditate for 12 hours. Usually that was again, because there was no clocks, there was no calendars. This was just my perception of what time was. And it appeared to be never ending. And when you sit in isolation and you do these things for 12 hours a day, for day after day, it turns into weeks, turns into months. And the only reason why I could tell it was months and years is because I could see the seasons change. That was the only way I was able to indicate what time it was or what month it was. And even then I had to guess. I was like, is it July or is it August? I don't even remember anymore. It was just the changing of the season was my calendar. So that level of isolation and training, it will push you to an incredible difficulty. And I had to look this up years later. I had to look it up through the CIA-based training, the government torture programs. Turns out that it isn't guns and knives that's the most destructive thing to a human being as far as torture goes. It's not guns and knives. It's not waterboarding. It turns out that isolation is the most incredible form of human torture that is known to man. And that's why isolation is what they gave me, because they didn't want to give me just any old torture. No. We're going to give you the grandfather, the granddaddy of all human suffering, and that is isolation. That's why monks isolate, because they're trying to torture themselves to the highest degree possible to attain a perception of reality that is not based upon the physical, but it's based upon the awareness of your consciousness, your conscious awareness. So to get to that conscious awareness, you got to push through the physical all the way. And I can't think of a more difficult task as far as pushing past the physical than isolation. That is the most difficult thing you could ever do.
Did you feel a change going on inside of you? Were you aware of a change? Were you focused on the agony or?
Oh, absolutely. Anybody in this, I'm not special by any means. If I put you in an isolation room for 6 months, you're going to go through an entire roller coaster of you're in anger. Oh, I want to kill everybody for a week. And then you're constantly crying for a month. Oh, I just don't know what's going on. You're just confused. You're scared. You're angry. And then you'll change to just happy. You get so lost because you're so isolated that you'll start laughing hysterically at anything. So you'll go through these cycles. And this is a commonality amongst every monk. They didn't freak out because they knew this is what we all go through to get to that level of inner stillness, that you're going to go through a lot. You're going to go through a roller coaster, and you are your own enemy. There is no enemy out there. You are your greatest enemy. And I always heard that as a kid, but I never really understood what that meant until I spent 2 years in isolation. Now I understand that my thoughts, my self-talk, that is the enemy. And the enemy has many tools because your past is all you have. When you have zero sensory information coming into your eyes, your ears, your mouth, we can talk and communicate like we are now. But when all that sensory information is gone, the only thing you have left is everything that you recorded prior. Your past pain, your past injuries, your past triumphs. Your brain will replay this like a videotape where, it'll go back and re-record and re-replay everything again as if it's happening in your own head. So you can relive a traumatic event over and over and over, like a non-stop, rewind, play, and it can drive a person mad. So they have to have guidance. We had guidances every morning. Physical training was a massive part of this, to be able to extinguish the pain in the heart. And monks, they do incredible things. My teachers would get rocks from the river, and they would shave their heads raw, bloody, with rocks. And then they would stand on their scalps, upside down on the ground, with pebbles and everything, digging into their head. And, I've always asked these monks that, this is synonymous with monks. They do incredibly painful things. And I've asked my masters, why are we doing stuff like this? What's the point of this? And they told me, because if you're going to live in isolation, you're going to be replaying all your trauma. All your events are going to come back. You have nothing else to go on. So it takes pain to extinguish pain. And this is what prisoners do in lockup. I've talked to many prisoners because, again, I grew up in New Mexico. I have many, many, many friends who went to county lockup for 6 months, 6 years. I've talked to prisoners. And what are prisoners doing? They're also inflicting pain on themselves. They'll do push-ups, diamond push-up, pull-up, barbell work in their cells 3 hours a day. And I've asked these prisoners, just like the monks, why are you doing this? They're not trying to be jacked, or they're not trying to be spiritual. They're just trying to get rid of the pain in their hearts of missing their children, their family, their friends. They're locked up in a 6x9 foot square. They're not getting out. Could you imagine the pain involved with being isolated like that for years at a time? Monks realize the same thing. My masters told me the same thing. Do you think we really want to be here, Jonathan? I don't have a family. I don't have a wife. I don't have kids. I don't have friends. Do you know how much that hurts to not be able to have a community of people? Even though I've been here for 20 years, it still hurts, because we are social creatures built for socializing, right? Without socializing, we die. This is shown in research. If you take children who are just born, put them in an isolated little cell, give them food, water, the best nutrients in the world, and guess what? Without human touch and connection, those little babies, they always end up dying. Connection is wired into us, and if we don't have it, we perish. We literally fall apart. We die. And so to get rid of that pain, the monks over eons has developed these techniques of physical training to extinguish the pain in their heart by inflicting self-pain, but in a positive way. Just like just like the prisoners in prison. They're doing push-up, pull-ups all day. It's painful. They're getting rid of the pain. It takes pain to extinguish pain. That is literally how they extinguish it, and they taught me the same principles. So that's why they had me carrying the rocks, doing these grueling, horse stance holds for 2 hours until you're shaking and you're crying. Like, you have to get that pain out. Otherwise, you will never make it in isolation. That was day one. Literally, that was day one.
Question, John.
Yep.
What is isolation monk style? What does that look like? Do they put you in the woods, or do they put you in a cage? What is it like?
Well, for the first 2 years, because I didn't know that they had like a preliminary beginners kind of thing, and I didn't know that the masters isolated themselves in caves in the mountains in the middle of nowhere. So they saw that I was able to survive this for the first, between 1 year and 2 years. They were like, Jonathan's adapting. Jonathan can take the isolation. A lot of people couldn't. Where I was at, a lot of people got kicked out. A lot of people, they went a little crazy for after a while. They couldn't handle it. But me, I didn't have anything to go back to. Okay, I'm here, and this is really, really difficult. Okay, I can leave at any time. And they opened the door. If you don't like it here, we're not holding you hostage. This is not a cult. If you don't like it, you can leave. And a lot of people did. After 6 months, people running for the door. But Jonathan here, I don't got no mom, I don't got no dad, I don't got nobody to go to, I don't got nothing. I'm already a goner, so I'm just gonna stick it out. I'm gonna endure this and stick with it. So the beginning, like you said, the beginning is more like a community style. Everybody like in a giant, huddle thing with the robes on, and they give you the beads. So a lot of it's bead counting, the Om Prani Mani Om. They have you do mantras, and you're breathing with these cadences all day. And you're in lotus position, and you are following the mantras, and that's it. You will do those mantras hour after hour after hour, day after day, without really any break. And it's like I said, I can imagine something more grueling than doing that for months at a time and even years. So after the first 2 years, they said, Jonathan, you've survived. You are still here. So what they did is they invited me to go with the teachers to leave the camp that we were at and to walk hours into the mountains and go into these weird caves with candles and little boxes. And that's where I stayed. And it was no longer the daily routine. It was meditation all day, every day, without break. And that lasted for almost 2 years, just about 2 years. So, and it gets even more difficult because in the preliminary training, you get to eat. They had goats there. They had, chai. They had wild rice. They had stuff like that just for the, the community. But when you're with the masters in the caves training, you eat once a week. That's it. You eat the average standard diet of barley, maybe a little bit of the chai, and that's it. You eat one time a week. And you are in this little tiny box that they had made for us. You're sitting in there so your back doesn't give out. Because again, you are losing so much weight and you are basically trying not to die. And that's the point of the meditation with the masters, is you push yourself between this life and the next. And you get on that fine edge. And that's where you stay. So time doesn't really necessarily hold when a person's so deficient in all minerals, you have almost no muscle mass left. You are on that edge of life and death, and that's where we stayed for 2 years in a row. So this is a very, very difficult thing to comprehend for almost anybody, and for most people, it would just break you. And that's the point, you see. They didn't want to break you to hurt you. They were trying to break you physically so you could only have awareness over your consciousness. You got to get rid of the physical. Got to get it down to the point where it's not going to get in the way anymore. And that's, fasting, starvation, isolation, breathing. Then when the physical gets out of the way, you have the full experience of your conscious awareness, and that's where you stay. So 2 years to me felt like it felt like thousands of years, honestly. Like if I had to look back on it now, my perception of time was so distorted that it felt like I was gone for a couple thousand years. I mean, that's what it felt like to me. So
when you come out of isolation,
yeah,
do you talk a lot? Do you talk a lot to everybody all of a sudden, or do you have so much to say? Or
that's a very good question, because honestly, getting out of isolation and going back into society was 10 times harder than going into isolation. It took me, I want to say it took about 5 years of rehabilitation, like verbally, thinking wise, because after 4 years, I was like sitting there like, what's my name? Like, is it Jerry? Like, I literally couldn't even remember my name. Like, I seriously had forgotten my name for a good year and a half. I was like, what the hell am I called? Like, you forget what language is. You forget what speech is. You forget what mannerisms are. So it took about 5 years of rehabilitation, heavy rehabilitation, to get back into society as a quote unquote normal, individual. That took a lot longer than it did to get into isolation and deal with that. So getting out was so much harder than I ever could have imagined. Like, I can't tell you, and I tell people to this day, like, when you're in isolation for that long and you go back out into Walmart, for example, I was literally fainting in the store. Like, that's honestly true. I would go into Walmart and all this chattering, all this noise, internal dialogue was so clear to me because I was in isolation for so long that it was overwhelming. The amount of self-hate I saw, the amount of hate towards others, the amount of confusion, disorientation was so overwhelming that I would literally faint in the store. it was that bad where I couldn't take it. I couldn't take walking into a gas station for a couple of years. It was that difficult for me. And had I known that, they didn't tell me that in the beginning. I had to find that out on my own later on. Boy, that was very, very traumatic. And you know what? That was my gift, because you see, I went from that to that. So along the way, I had to devise tools. I had to devise strategies that were modern, realistic, to be able to cope, to develop training systems, develop whatever I needed to do to be able to handle living in society again. I had to go all in, all the way, go back to the basic 101 biology books. I had stacks of books in my apartment for years. I didn't go anywhere. I just literally had to figure out this stuff. And that was my gift, because you see, now when I train people, I'm literally training them from that deep level of experience and perception that, yeah, sure, you didn't have to do that. And that's insane what I did. That is absolutely insanity beyond all stretches of the imagination what I did. You don't have to go there. If you just understand the biology and the anatomy, like I point out to you, you can get yourself at any isolation that you are in. We all have some type of injury, right? Mentally, psychologically, something happens to each and every one of us. What do you do to get out of that? Well, it turns out that I didn't have any intention in teaching this stuff ever. It just turns out that I was so good at getting out of that I helped other people, and still do, get out of their isolation, out of their meditation, out of their stretches that they are doing behind closed doors when nobody's looking. So that's my greatest gift, and that came in the form of my greatest pain. And I stand by this statement, and I will always stand by this statement. Your pain, your injuries in your life are the gift. They are the strength that you need to get out of it. When you develop the strength to get out of it, that strength to develop, that is your gift. That is your personal, unique superpower that you have in this world, and that's where you shine the most. So thinking about it from that point of view changes the conversation from a negative, oh my God, Jonathan, crazy thing. Wow, I see now that my pain is my greatest gift, because I turned my gift into world records, into doing feats of strength that nobody on planet Earth has been able. I'm the only person alive who can do several of the things that I have done and still can do. Nobody can do it. Why? Is it because I'm special? Absolutely not. No, am I not special at all? You can do the same thing I can do, but why can't anybody do it? Because they haven't done the steps anatomically, biologically, to develop themselves in those ways so that they can utilize those skills to do those things. That's it. It's a matter of having the blueprint, knowing the science anatomy, and then applying it. That's it. That's what separates the average from the best, the normal from the super normal. It's like, that is literally what it takes. That's what you have to do. Everybody has that capability. It's withheld from nobody on this earth. I don't care. My grandma could outdo me, seriously, if she wanted to. I stand by that statement.
I'd like to see that, John. But
Yeah.
That's
aside
awesome.
from John, I am absolutely floored. This was actually the underpinnings of this conversation. Was not one of the main things that we wanted to talk about.
Yep.
We wanted to talk about the breathing. But
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. Yep. It's so simple.
Yeah,
It'll blow your hair back. Yep.
Yeah. Because this is.
Well,
This
he
is
doesn't
a
have
great,
much to be blown back, so that's good.
groundwork. What you have experienced is the foundation for what we want to, really dive into with the
Yep.
breathing. But my gosh, before we do that, I think it's an appropriate time. We have this rapid fire questions that we like to ask, and some of the content of the questions have a lot of bearing on what you've just spoke about, and then we'll jump into the breathing training. Okay. So rapid fire, put your seatbelt on. Oh, you've been through worse. All right, here we go.
Yeah.
Question number one. Question number one. What is more important, hand strength or foot strength, and why?
Well, living in the wilderness for many years, hand strength. Your entire body, your connection point is your hands. You can have the biggest, strongest muscles, the biggest, strongest legs, everything. If your hands can't grab onto and hold onto to protect yourself or move something, all that strength is gone because your connection point is weak. That makes everything that connects us to it also weak as well. Your hands are it. They are your ultimate end of survival tool for staying alive, protecting yourself. All the above is your hands.
So it sounds like a crazy question that I'm going to ask as number 2, but it has a lot of bearing on what you just said. So a big man comes up to you and challenges you to an arm wrestling match. What's your approach, and what technique will you use to beat him?
Well, one of the greatest techniques I use to beat anything that is against me is by being beaten. I want to be beaten. Please, I'm going to try my best, but I want you to beat me, because that's going to give me the motivation, the insight, the real life application of what I must do. I can form a blueprint in 10 minutes. This is what I have to do anatomically, scientifically. This is what my every day is going to look like. So not only are you going to make me better, you're going to change my entire life, because I'm going to get up every day. I'm going to follow the non-negotiable routines necessary to attain that goal that I can't right now. Doesn't mean anything to me. It's my potential to achieve it is what I'm more interested in it. So if somebody beats me, that's the best day of my life, because I can get up the next day and change everything to be a better human being, a more precise human being, and to discipline myself to the point of inner peace. This is what people don't understand. Inner peace means not knowing time as it passes. If I am too busy following a workout routine, nutrition routine, a mindset routine, all this routine, I don't know time as it passes, because all my time it does not belong to me. So that's how I would beat you, because you're going to change me forever, and I'm going to change everything I need to. When I see you again, I'm going to beat you. And if it doesn't happen that time, it'll happen the next time. You are not going to stop me, I can't stop you or anybody. We can't stop anybody from achieving their ultimate potential. So beating me is how I beat you. And that's what life will give you. Life will beat you. I don't care who you are, how tough you are. Life's going to come and it's going to beat you down. If you take that in the way I just said it, you will always beat it back. You will always find a way to overcome with that mindset every single time.
Hey, Jon, hang on just a second. Terry, do you notice, for those who are going to watch this podcast, Jon, your physiology, I think you're sitting on the floor, right?
Yep.
And his posture is so convicting, and you're not just answering the questions, your body and your tone are so inspiring that I just want to recognize that, especially those who are going to be watching you on our YouTube channel. It's fantastic, man. I mean, all right, I thank you.
Totally,
it really,
totally.
you own this. You own it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With wisdom, with it, it's application versus, conceptualization. When you apply this stuff, you become it. You don't just think about being it. You are it. And that is what is phenomenal about this type of training, and you can be it. You must be it. You can't just talk about it. You can't just think about it. You have to actually apply it. And that's where the magic is, through application. When you apply it every day, constantly, you will become somebody that is just very, very different in a positive way. You'll own the information in a way that's not logical. I'm not thinking about this stuff at all. It's just pouring out of me, because the application is constant. The wisdom comes from that. That's where wisdom is embedded in the application.
Jon, I got 3 more questions for you, and I really, really, I know Terry and I are waiting to jump into the breath work,
Yep.
but question number 3, if you could go back in time and meet anyone, who and why?
Yeah, I've actually been asked that question before. People have asked me a lot of weird questions over the years because of everything that I've achieved and everything that I've done. Like I've asked weird questions, and the answer is I wouldn't go back at all. There is no body. When you start to become aware that everything is expanded awareness, and we're all aware, we're all just awareness. I already am everything that exists, and so are you. We're all eternal awareness. There is nobody to go back to. There is no time, no space, no body. You are already all that is, has been, and ever can be, having a brief experience called Jonathan temporarily. So I wouldn't go back at all. I would stay right here. I would get lost in the work, and that's where I would stay, right here, right now.
Do you have, question number 4, do you have any one habit that you wish you could break?
Well, I guess if there was a habit that we wish we could break, I mean, I'm just one person. We all wish we could break. That's the habit of being broken all the time. Because as my masters had taught me a long time ago, that they had to break it down to me in a very subtle way. But they said, Jonathan, I hate to break you the bad news, but you're never going to be healed. And I'm like, what? Like, you're going to have to get used to the fact that you're going to habitually not be healed. What do you mean? I thought you guys were masters, right? What are you guys talking about? You guys are Buddhists. You're masters. I thought you're healed. No. If it's not going to be this, it's going to be that. The dog gets sick. You get laid off. Something is going to happen along the way. It's going to break you. Life's going to come no matter where you run, how much money you have. You're going to get broken. It's going to happen. So you need to get into the habit of realizing that you're going to be broken. I wish I could break that habit. That's the only habit I wish I could break, a habit of being broken all the time. It's something I can't change, though. It's going to happen. So,
Question number 5. This is a little bit different than what we've been asking. Thoughts on cross-friction massage for scar tissue versus elongating the tissue? We know you are a certified therapist, so could you just throw that out?
Yeah. Honestly, utilizing both would be a good thing, especially what Kathy does, correcting the movement patterns. So that, why did that get in there in the first place? Or addressing that root, and then using all the other tools you have to help facilitate correcting that issue at the same exact time. I think if you can blend it all together with nutrition, sleep, all this other stuff, that would be the ultimate approach, right? Why not use all the tools in your toolbox versus just one or two?
Super fantastic. Okay, now what we've all been waiting for. Talk about, people take breathing for granted. We've had a couple guests on our show that are masterful in their explanation, and you obviously also have created this environment for yourself of how breathing can make a difference. So jump on in and tell us about this breath work.
So the answer, again, these are old questions to me. I've been asked so many things over the years. This right here, you see these two watches over my eyes, is how I see reality. And that's kind of why I wear the watches. They're for certain things that I'll explain in a minute. But doing a stretch, I am actually still in that mindset of timelessness. It's something you have to train. Now, what does that even mean? There's a lot of esotericness to this breath control, yin qi and yang qi and all this stuff. So what does that mean anatomically? What does that mean for somebody who's done this for so long, year after year after year after year, for almost 2 decades now? What does that actually mean? And breath control, in its basic form, is your ability to have sympathetic or parasympathetic response. That is literally where breathing actually begins and ends, because like Kathy's talked about this before, on the exhale, when you breathe in, on the exhale, if you elongate the exhale, your diaphragm, the thing that breathes for you in your chest, has this nerve called the phrenic nerve that connects to the vagus nerve. So when you exhale really long, you turn on the vagus nerve, and fancy word of saying that is parasympathetic. And an even simpler way of saying that is rest and digest. That is your calm thing. And everybody's already mastered this. When you come home from a long day of work, hard day of work, right? What do? You sit on the couch and you go, oh, boy, that was a hard day of work. What are you doing? Using your mouth, and you're extending the exhale. You are triggering your own parasympathetic response. Why? You're trying to calm yourself down. Now, what does that mean anatomically? You're increasing your digestive system, your immune system, you're turning on your stomach, basically, your intestines, everything are working. That turns off when you're stressed out. It turns on when you're at ease, when you're relaxed. That exhale is the trigger that electrically, anatomically turns on that healing, rest, digest, that calm state that you have in your nervous system. Because your nervous system is essentially two basic branches. Just breaking it down, simple, two things. Your fight or flight, or you're resting and calm. Everybody knows that sensation so well. When they're in traffic and they hit the horn and they're late for work, oh my God, you know what that already feels like. Sympathetics. Everybody knows what stress feels like. You don't got to talk to anybody about that. You already mastered that feeling. And in our culture today, with the amount of stress we see, people are walking around Buddhist masters of stress. Believe me, they have mastered the ability. They know the sensation. They know it very well. But what we don't know it very well is the second part of the branch. Calm down, relaxing branch. Oh, it's so complicated. It's actually quite simple. When you breathe in, slow, because again, the word control means to slow down. So when people say I got to exercise self-control, they're saying I got to slow myself down. So breath control essentially means to breathe in a slow, controlled fashion, because the word control literally means to slow down. And you control the exhale to always be double or elongated from the inhale. It's very simple to understand these concepts. That, well, through the nose is better because you have nitric oxide receptors in the nose, way more than the mouth. So if I breathe in through the nose, nitric oxide is what allows you to absorb more oxygen, use more oxygen. So you're actually using a lot more of the oxygen you breathe in when you use your nose. Simple as that. The more oxygen you have in your body, the more you can sustain and control and relax the exhale, because you have more oxygen. If you hold your breath for too long, you get that panicky feeling to breathe. Well, the less sympathetic reaction you have, because that's sympathetic. If you can't breathe, that stress you feel, that's sympathetic. The more oxygen you have, the more calm and relaxed you can exhale out slowly, so you can access your parasympathetic more, because you have more of an oxygen reserve. It's like money in the bank. Think about it like that. Simple principles. If I got tons of money in the bank, I don't got to worry about the bills, bro. But if I got $10 in there, oh my God, what am I going to do? So think of oxygen as money, okay? I'm getting more money into my bank so that I have more to expend out, and I can be relaxed while spending, and spending is exhale. I don't got to worry. I got money in the bank. That's the way I teach it. Simple premises.
Now I have to ask you. You mentioned timelessness.
Yep.
But you're wearing two watches.
Exactly. Because this is also a reminder for me that, guess what? This alarm clock set for 6:30. I got to get up and breathe. This alarm clock is set for when I got to eat. This one's for when I got to go to bed. This is one set for all these other things. Since I know that time is passing, but I know it doesn't belong to me, I don't have to necessarily think about the time that is passing, and therefore, I don't know time as it passes. Yeah, I see time passing, but my job is to make sure that I don't know that it's passing, because it doesn't belong to me. And it's always a constant reminder, your time does not belong to you. And this is where a lot of people go wrong in life. When these are the three words that destroy inner peace. I'll tell you right now, the three words: I'm doing me. I got to do me. I got to go out there and have fun and drink with Tommy on the weekends and woo! I got to live it up, or I got to have some fun, right? Well, as I know personally, living on the streets, doing drugs with Tommy and hanging out in a van down by the river like I did for all those years, it's not fun if it doesn't end well. So if I know that I could blow off my training and blow off all this, oh, time belongs to me, I'm doing me, right? Well, guess what? I'm going to be so obsessed with time because I got to worry about the way I feel. I got to worry about how I'm going to react, where I want to go, how that's going to make me possibly feel. Guess what? I'm knowing time as it passes all the time. And there goes my inner peace, because I'm worried about the future and fearful of the past, right? That's what an old saying is. If you're living in fear, you're in the past. You're living in worry, you're living in the future. You're constantly in a state of fear or worry, fear or worry, fear or worry. That is the exact opposite of inner peace. Inner peace is stillness. It's not knowing time as it passes because your time doesn't belong to you. It allows you to stay present right here, right now, because you got nothing to look forward to because you know what's coming, and you got nothing to fear about because you know what's going to pass, and you know what you got to look back on. It's all taken care of, and this is what I learned living with Buddhist monks. This is how they live their life. I just adopted it to our modern world and utilized it in a way where I can use it in modern world and still have that same level of awareness that they contain in an environment that's suited for fear and worry on a constant basis. Because believe me, when you're in the middle of the forest, people tell me all the time, "Oh, it must have been real easy living in the forest. You don't got to worry about nothing." I'm like, "Oh no." Yes, that's true. There is no noise, no distractions, but there is an entirely different set of worrying. Oh, what about bears? What about starving to death? If I fall down, I'm like 6 hours from a hospital. I'm probably not going to make it. So there's a whole different set of worries. So no matter where you go, you're in the mountains or you're in New York City, where I lived at. Me and Kathy lived for years. I don't care if you're in the mountain or on Broadway. You're going to have a worry. You're going to have a fear. So you're not escaping that no matter where you're at. How do you manage it? How do you stay inner peace living within inevitable worry and fear? That is the riddle right there. And I think I've cracked it because I've copied it from masters. And these are the most peaceful people I have ever come across. And I still, to this day, what are they doing that's different? They're living their life just like I have, but just adopted in a different way.
And thank you for your time and your wisdom and taking us inside what it's the monk experience. I think that was actually really cool. And the breath work is a tool that we could start with tomorrow.
Really cool. And this is an everyday thing. This is where the magic is. Yeah, okay, doing the 5-10 breathing and there's breath control exercises. Do the ones that you know. But the magic comes from doing it non-negotiable every single day. It changes you in a way that allows you to expand your awareness into what else can I do? What else is possible? And that's where this whole thing begins. But you got to do it, which means you got to do it every day. Non-negotiable is the magic that most people are actually looking for.
Terry, you got anything?
All right, Lance. We're all
Thank
good.
you guys so much.
Thank you so much for your time, John.